Hey friends, it is Monday, February 7th, 2022, and this is your Daily Detroit, the podcast sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. I'm Jer Stays, and today we're talking about the new Detroit House of Comedy opening up on Woodward at Montcalm across from the Fox, and my guest is John Tobin. He, along with co-owner Rick Bronson, are bringing this to town, and they'll have stand-up, improv comedy, and podcasts from local, regional, and national headliners. It's been a while since that venue has seen regular action, so I wanted to learn more about it. Let's just jump into the conversation. Joining me virtually, John Tobin. He's a comedy club owner, producer, and also one of the key people behind making sure that the Detroit House of Comedy is a thing. Welcome to Daily Detroit.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So this spot on Woodward has been a place that people interested in comedy, they know in the past because it had a thing there before, the Second City, but it's been dark for quite a while. Why now and why Detroit?
Well, it was supposed to actually happen a few years ago. And I've always, as a lifelong Bostonian, had the opportunity. I love Boston. I've had, through comedy, primarily, I've had an opportunity to travel around the United States. I've always loved Detroit. I actually dated a woman years ago who lived in Windsor. And so we would come down to Detroit. This is back in the 90s. And come down to Detroit and go to Greektown and go to some of the restaurants. And, it was like a lot of cities, it was a different place back then. So we started to refocus on it as we started to kind of expand our brand around the country outside of Massachusetts. And, you're in this business long enough, you form relationships, become friends with other independent comedy club owners. And, the possibilities of, why am I inside this box? Why, what about expansion? And one of the first cities we looked at was Detroit. My partners, Rick and Tammy Bronson, they're Canadian. Rick was a touring comic back in the day and toured all across Canada, played Mark Ridley's place, the Comedy Castle, and they have 2 clubs in Canada, 2 in the States. So we started talking about, I'd already been to Detroit and toured a number of spaces with our brokers, but we kept on coming back to that area in Hockeytown, which I recall fondly, from being there in the 90s and, going to Wings games at at Joe Louis. And I just loved the city. It reminds me a lot of Boston in some ways. Boston had its down period as well. Detroit's, Boston rebounded faster. But I've always had a great admiration for the people of Detroit. They're hardworking, Midwestern sensibility, racially diverse. And there's something about, they were down and out and they've risen up. And you got to appreciate that in a city. And to see, so we were all set to go. We had a signed lease before COVID. So we should actually be open, should have been open 2 years by now. But then again, you can say that for so many other things across the world.
I mean, I could say that here at Daily Detroit for a bunch of things,
Yeah, of course, right? So everybody's lives were affected. And so it is what it is. And we're fortunate to be out on the other side here. And so, we're ready to go. But I've been there a couple of times in the past couple of weeks and just to see what's going on in the new restaurants and the nightlife beginning to come back and the Fox Theater filled up and, hopefully the lockout ends and the Tigers are playing ball in April and, to see, that the Wings are having a really good year and to see the new arena, filled up with not just sporting events, but concerts. And there's a whole new energy and life that's been, breathing the city in the past 10 years. And like a lot of cities, they were down during COVID, but they're rebounding strongly. And we're just really excited to be, a small part of that.
It's crazy to me to think that downtown Detroit hasn't had a full-time comedy club. And according to the press materials, the only one in Detroit. I mean, I know there's pop-ups and things, but it's crazy, especially considering how much great comedic talent is in this town.
Oh my goodness. I mean, Detroit, the roster of comedians that have come out of the city and that still continue to be there and is extraordinary. Yeah, it is a little bit surprising, to tell you the truth. And this is not to, there are a number of, as you mentioned, pop-up shows and nightly shows and weekly shows. That's all part of a great comedy scene. And we do not come into a city. We're in Plano, Texas now. We opened there in October. We do not come in with the intention of trying to Bigfoot anybody around. We want to be a part of the comedy scene and be an additive to it. And to appear on a stage, it's going to be a 300-seat club, and so but it needs to be open. We want it to be open all the time, but it's going to be a place where you develop talent as well. And so a lot of these one-nighters and pop-up rooms, and some of them are long established that are in Detroit or the metro area. Those are great, and we love that. But we want that talent to continue to develop, and we're going to bring in national headliners. But there's also going to be nights at the club that we feature, purely Detroit comics. But it's like weightlifting or working out. Not that I'm a big weightlifter, but the only way you get bigger and stronger is by working out. You don't get it by talking about it. And the only way you develop and get better as a comedian is by being on stage in front of an audience. I don't care if it's 7 people or 700. There's always that development and exercising that muscle. It's going to be a place where we embrace local comedy because, quite honestly, we need them.
Well, and let's be honest, if you want to build a scene anywhere, you need generally more is better than less, especially in the situation we're in. I mean, I got to shout out places like Planet and in Hamtramck, which is not technically in the city of Detroit, but they've done a lot of things. And, you talk about some of the clubs that have been here in different places, but, you need that time. You need that idea where if I want to go see a comedy show any night of the week, I can go do it. And you really got to search for it right now.
Right. Yeah, I know. And and we think once we're open, even more of those places will open up. And we love that. We have for example, I have Laugh Boston, which is a 300-seat, great, a comedy club in the Seaport of Boston. We've been open for 8 years. We really filled a need because, believe it or not, for a long time, there was no 300-seat comedy club in the city of Boston for like 15 years. It was all theaters or it was, 130-seat rooms. So there was this whole gulf of comedians, really strong touring comedians that, the 130-seaters were too small for them and the theaters were too big. I'm just talking about road dogs that, some are names and some are not, but they are funny. And so we filled that void there. The open mic scene and the produced open mics that have evolved and have emerged over the past 8 years has been extraordinary because there's some semblance of a scene back. So while that exists in Detroit and the metro area right now, we anticipate that will only increase once the Detroit House of Comedy is up and operational. And that's great. I've already had a number of conversations, going back a couple of years because we thought we'd be open 2 years ago with local Detroit comedians. We're going to hire somebody in a Detroit comedy person who knows the area to book our openers and features and kind of those off night headliner shows. We did the same thing in Plano, Texas. We hired a woman who runs the Plano Comedy Festival, reached out to her and had conversations with us, and now she books our local talent in Texas. We need that because I can only live in one place, right? So I can't be there all the time. But I must say, since the official announcement yesterday, I mean, this has been one of the worst kept secrets in the history of Detroit that we were coming. But now that it's really out there and official, and the outpouring by Detroit comics and producers has been mind-blowing. I was up till 1:00 this morning, fielding LinkedIn requests and Facebook requests and people sending me their resumes and sending me their videos, and it's exciting.
You mentioned 300 seats at a couple other venues. I look at the press materials, 300 seats here. Why 300? I mean, is that just a number you love, or like what have you learned about a venue that size?
Yeah, we've learned. I mean, Rick and Tammy's clubs. As I mentioned, they've got Edmonton and Vancouver. They've got Minnesota and Arizona, and they're all in that 300-seat kind of sweet spot. Laugh Boston is 300 seats. Plano, Texas is 300 seats. It just seems like it's enough of a number to attract those national headliners. Like I said, those people who go out on the road weekend in and weekend out, and and they are able to do 4 or 5 shows Thursday. One show on Thursday, 2 Friday, 2 Saturday, and are able to fill that place or come close to capacity. It just seems like a sweet spot number for whatever reason.
Helps make the juice worth the squeeze.
Yeah, you get that right. So listen, we all love the entertainment business, and but there's and the product and producing things, but there are obviously economics behind things. There are leases to be paid, and and people to be paid, and staff, and comedians, and there's a whole bunch of factors that go into it. So you have to look at the economics. That just seems like a number that by and large works pretty well. And I mean, obviously, you can't. That room can easily accommodate 300 people in the remodel that we just embarked on over there.
Yeah, let's talk about that remodel, because I imagine some listeners, a number of listeners, probably haven't been to one of your other locations. What do you have in mind for the experience here in Detroit?
We consider it going to a comedy show the equivalent of going to a sporting event. It's exciting. We also recognize there are so many options for people in their dollar, whether it's one of the great restaurants in Detroit, whether it's the Fox Theater or the Fillmore, and I hate to name a whole bunch of places because it'll leave it, and there's all the Lions and the Tigers and the Wings and the Pistons, and there's so many different options out there in the city for people to spend their money and spend their time. So we recognize that comedy clubs, by and large, aren't the type of place that people go to, every single weekend. But when they do come, we want it to be an experience where they want to come back. So there's a sense of energy, sense of excitement. We're building back. For those of your listeners, and I'm sure you're familiar with the old Second City site. When Second City was there, it was a beautiful setup, and almost like a comedy club, and kind of an elevated, kind of almost like an amphitheater type of thing with a big stage. After they moved out, the landlords at Hockeytown, they took out all the cocktail tables and chairs, and they installed like theater seats, like almost like a movie theater. So we're going back to the Second City model, more of a nightclub model, because theater seats don't in a comedy club they're not conducive to servers walking around and getting food and drink to people. People generally go to comedy clubs in as couples or in groups of four. So that people have their own tables. That promotes conversation and before the show and a sense of excitement. If they kept it the way it was, we'd be open by now. But it is what it is. And
I think about the comedy shows I've gone to, and the only times that I have been in theater seating is when it's a taped show for like TV or something.
Right, where they don't want the distraction, the server, dropping a tray of drinks and suddenly have to react, to that. Yeah, it's a straight shot, and you can understand that. I always tell, there's so many great comedians out there and so many great specials out there. And, over the years, I heard people say, well, I can just watch it on television. I say, there's nothing beats the live experience of being there and a comedian on stage, in their act, and then, someone says something in the crowd, or like I said, a server drops a tray of drinks, and the comedian's going to react to that. That's the stuff you don't see on TV, that energy, that excitement. And, think about it. Those 300 people who are in that show with that comedian, that's the only time that group of people will ever be in the same room ever again together. And so it's a kind of a one-time experience for that particular show. So we wanted to, understanding there's a competitiveness out there, people work hard for their dollars, and they're wise about how they spend it. We want to be an experience where people walk out and they say, wow, I can't wait to do that again. Because quite honestly, and I loved comedy growing up as a boy, and then my first live comedy show, I snuck in with a couple of friends when I was 17 years old to Nick's Comedy Stop in Boston, which is a legendary place. It's still going, and I run the place now, which is one of my greatest honors.
Wow, that's a cool thing. That's a cool thing, man.
I was a junior in high school, and we saw a comedy show that we walked out of the place. I had never seen anything like that in my entire life. It changed my life. It really did. And I said, I can't wait to go back there. And we went back there, I think, every other weekend for the next 3 years. It was just such a great live experience. That was so much fun. And that's what I always tell people. You go out there and just watch it once. And even young people who are conditioned now to, I have two boys that are 14 and 15. They're out there, but like every other kid, their heads are stuck in devices. And I tell them all the time, I said, look, when you're 30 years old and you're having a couple of beers with your friends after a midnight pickup hockey game, and you're out in the parking lot, you will not be talking and laughing about TikTok videos you saw. You're going to, because those are just mind-numbing, and they're eye candy that disappear as fast as they came in. You're going to be talking about experiences. And some of my greatest stories are experiences in comedy clubs, at shows, behind the scenes. That's what you're going to be talking about, those kind of live experiences that you had with your friends.
Do you have any idea at this point about the food and beverage program on this one yet, or is that still coming together? Do you got a vision for that? Templates you can use from your other places?
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit different than we usually, run the whole bar and restaurant at our places. It's going to be, because we're in the Hockeytown building, we got an exciting. It's going to be served. The food and beverage is going to be served out of Hockeytown. They're our partners.
Okay.
So Hockeytown will serve it, and they'll have a menu. I'm actually doing a call today with the general manager there, and they'll have a menu that's catered specifically to the Detroit House of Comedy, and they've been wonderful to work with so far, and we need them. It'll be a great partnership, but it really did make sense to bring in your own food and beverage when you've got Hockeytown right there. So we're excited to be added to that place, and it's a place I've spent a lot of time at over the years. As I mentioned, I have two boys, and every year I take them, I split them up, and I let them pick a city where we do a sports and cultural trip. They're sports nuts, but I told them there's going to be culture involved too. So a couple of years ago, my oldest kid chose Detroit, and going into hockey, it was going to Hockeytown. We went to a game at the old Joe Louis. It was the last year of the Joe. We went up to Auburn Hills when the Pistons were still there. We went to the University of Michigan and threw a football on the field where Tom Brady played. We went to the Ford factory, and it was just an extraordinary trip. And to see a city that I fell in love with years ago, to see my boy fall in love with it was pretty exciting. I think people are going to fall in love with the Detroit House of Comedy, and if the early indication, the support is in the embrace is any indication, we've got a winner here.
Well, there's an old saying that was printed on some of the brochures: Detroit is the place to be, and I believe that 100%. Before I let you go, when is this thing going to open? When can people expect to get some of their laughs in?
Well, it all depends. We've got the remodel will start as soon as possible. We got our general contractor picked out, which we had picked out 2 years ago, and they're terrific. And so there's a permitting process and a couple of things that have to be done. So I'd love to be open by late spring. I mean, that's our goal, and that's our target. So we are working hard to accomplish that. Based on the announcement yesterday, I wish we were open tonight, but
but sometime this year, kind of before it freezes, for sure.
Oh, it's when we're going to be open. We're going to be open this spring.
Okay, that would be great to see. All right, John Tobin, I appreciate your time all the way from Boston. Thank you, sir.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And we are done for today. If you want to support what we're doing, there are 3 ways. 1, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, more the better. 2, consider supporting us at buymeacoffee.com/dailydetroit so we can keep doing this. Or 3, tell a friend about the show. Word of mouth is the best way to grow the show. With that, I'm Jer Stays. Fletcher Sharp joins me tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Take care of each other, and I'll see you around Detroit.